Welcome to the NEC Perspectives Forum. My name is Stanford Thompson, and I graduated from NEC in 2010 from the System of Fellows program. In early June, President Kalin appointed me as her special advisor to help NEC respond to the cultural equity challenges facing the institution and NEC community. This evening's conversation is the fifth and final forum focused on the Black experience at NEC. These conversations provide all of us the opportunity to explore how we can help NEC live up to its commitment of cultural equity and belonging. By listening to the experiences and perspectives of our students, alumni, faculty, and staff, we will explore ideas that will build a more hopeful future for our current and prospective students. I am very humbled to be joined by four distinguished alumni of NEC that will share their past experiences, current realities, and ideas for the future. Our conversation will be led by Carmen Johnson-Pájaro, and she will be joined by deVon Russell-Gray, Darynn Dean, and John Alexander Garner. Thank you all for joining us this evening. Carmen?
Thanks, Stan. Really happy to be here and happy to be having this conversation, important and necessary conversation. So I thought that we could all just introduce ourselves first and then we'll get right into it. So deVon, you want to start?
Sure. deVon Gray, composer, born and raised in St. Paul, Minnesota, where I currently reside. I attended NEC as a classical composition major, 98 to 2001, and I'm happy to be a part of the conversation this evening.
Whoever wants to go next, Darynn.
Hi, everyone. Hey, Carmen. I am Darynn Dean. I am a 2019 NEC alum in jazz voice. I am from Los Angeles, California, and I love music, and it inspired me to take my passion to the next level by pursuing a career in the arts. And I am really excited to also find the bridge between arts and where it meets justice and equality. And so I reside in Los Angeles right now. I'm writing music, creating, and also planning a way for a sustainable future, not only musically, but also equitably.
Hello, I am John Alexander Garner III. I am from New York. I graduated NEC 2006 as a classical voice performance major. I currently reside in Berlin, Germany, and yes, it is 2 o'clock in the morning. Guten Tag.
All right. Hey, everybody. I am Carmen, and I was a violin performance major at NEC. I graduated with a master's degree in 2018, and I am currently living in New York, attending Juilliard for another master's in historical performance. I am really excited to be having this conversation. I've been having this conversation all summer with lots of different organizations. But I'm excited to be honing in the conversation to what NEC can do and our specific NEC experiences. So I want to just get right into it and start by asking everybody, what was your experience like as a Black person and an artist at NEC, but also just in Boston? I mean, we all know Boston has a history. So I just want to hear a little bit from all of you about what that was like for you.
Maybe I'll start as the elder. I heard terrible things about Boston ahead of leaving Minnesota to head there. So I had folks trying to tell me to gird myself and prepare myself for some nastiness, for some potential nastiness. But I never really experienced any direct or overt racism or nastiness from the city itself. We can talk about microaggressions later, but my time at NEC was really positive, really beautiful. There were a few things within my department that seemed a little odd and had to do a little pushing here and there, but I think that's true for all of us. I had a group of friends who also moved from Minnesota at the same time at various schools in Boston, and my Black friends all loathed their time in Boston, thought it was just incredibly hostile, incredibly aggressive and unwelcoming, and they could not wait to get out. I have said for years that I feel like I was protected by the warm and loving cocoon of classical music, because we focus on the music a lot of the time and we leave a lot of things unsaid. Again, we can talk about microaggressions later. But overall,
now go ahead if you want.
But overall, I really enjoyed my time and the community that I was a part of, and the relationships that I was able to forge. So lots of fond memories.
Yeah, it's interesting. I could piggyback off of deVon in that way, that going to NEC was such an incredible experience for me. I got to meet my friends and sing and perform everywhere. And yet I'm in the middle of Boston and it's so colonial. And it was the first time that I actually experienced active like racism, where like walking down the street and they, you know, a truck goes by and screams the N-word, this epithet. And I'm from California, and I know we're like progressive or whatever California may be, but there's still racism in California. But being in Boston, it was the first time that I experienced that in the city. And so it definitely, while NEC felt like a restorative place, it also felt like a place that I wanted to challenge, because if I could be inside school and not experience that in such a extreme way, but then walk outside of school and experience that, and to see my school not necessarily support me in a way of being like a Black woman, a Black singer, then these were kind of things that I really wanted to solution build on. So my time at NEC was doing like coalition building, like creating the Initiative for Social Change and starting a social justice and music program at the YMCA, and just pushing the institution to wake up outside of Jordan Hall, steps of Jordan Hall, and like 33G.
I would say my experience was also a very good one. I was very excited to come to Boston. I had heard from my grandmother. She had warned me about how Boston was one of the most racist cities she had been in. And my grandmother is from Georgia, so there's that. However, like deVon said, I came to NEC. I was very, very excited. I wasn't really looking for many problems. I was just overly joyed to be there. Um, However, once I got there, I did realize, I said, wow, there's not many people who look like me. And I think at that time in 2006, I mean, you can literally count on 4 to 5 hands in the entire school, the amount of Black people who were there, Black or brown people who were there. And also, there was no one reflected in really in the faculty. There wasn't much diversity in the faculty, unless you want to call, you know, the different countries of Europe diverse. Um, that was alarming to me a little bit. As a college student, you would want, or you would hope to think that you would see some sort of diversity amongst faculty and also within the student body. However, still, as deVon said, and as you said, Darynn, there wasn't much overt racism, or I didn't experience that, not even from the city of Boston. However, you understood when you saw the signs of no, what do they call, fitted hats or no boots. They're trying to tell you no Blacks, honey. They're trying to get at that. in a nicer way, in a roundabout way. So you sort of understood where you stood in society. So you just had to conform to their way. So that was a little disappointing, not being able to be your true, genuine self. But again, I really had the best time. It was awesome. Like, I mean, singing in Jordan Hall was great.
Yes, that hall is amazing. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I'll share a little bit about my experience, and it is different from y'all's. I will say, I'm going to bring a little bit of a different perspective. I mean, I think something that's really interesting about this panel is that you three were all undergrads, and I was there for my master's, which, I mean, there are a lot of factors at play there. Undergrad, you're part of this big community. It's exciting. It's your first time, and it's many people's first time in a big city too, right? So I feel like there's a lot of community happening, and you're focused on that, and you're hyped about like class and, oh my God, I'm going to do music and it's gonna be awesome. But when you're a master's student, you've kind of done the whole undergrad thing. You're trying to form connections, you know, you're thinking more like professional track. You also have some life experience, and maybe you're looking at, you know, your place in society and your place in your institution through a racial lens, unlike you might have done as an undergrad. And I have many feelings about my time at NEC. I was working a ton. I was kind of in and out of the school, but I have to say that in terms of race, I was way more aware of my race and the races of everybody around me at that school than I have been at any other institution. And there were many reasons for that. I don't know if this is the nature of also being a classical string player. So violin department looks very, very different, I'm assuming, from the jazz department, Darynn, and looks different from composition, different from voice, maybe not so different from voice. But no, the classical string department is its own thing, and it is hard to find people that look like me. Even though we are separated by many years, John, I definitely noticed that there were not too many people who look like me in the student body, definitely not on the faculty, and not really in the administration either. So I noticed that, and I felt that. And, you know, deVon, you say you don't want to get into microaggressions, but there were definitely microaggressions and things that I heard, really inappropriate comments from students, racial slurs within the institution. So I heard that in my department a lot, and especially really negative things about Black males, which we all know the U.S. is not a good time right now. But being a Black male is a specifically difficult. It's a very big conversation, and I think there's a lot of divide and cultural misunderstanding. We have a big international student body, and don't really address it and don't prepare them for these things that are happening. So my experience there in terms of race was, I think, a little bit different. And I guess talking about that, piggybacking off of that, what I want to ask is, do you guys believe that racial equity can be achieved through the system as it is? Or do you feel like we just need to dismantle it altogether and start over?
I feel, well, you know what? Actually, I'm gonna because Darynn, you're the recent person that has just left, right? You're the last person who just left. So maybe you should answer that. I don't know first.
I was gonna say the sky is falling. The sky is falling.
That was a little intense. I guess I just meant, you know, we're looking at 15 years of distance, really, from when y'all graduated and when we graduated.
Right.
There are a lot of the same problems, right? Like I'm at the school, I'm feeling a lot of the same things that you're talking about, John.
This is true. Yeah, you're right.
Darynn, we were there when Trump was elected, but that was a whole thing, right?
The day Trump was elected, it was like a black hole was in the middle of like Gainesboro and Huntington. And there was this, like, you know, like in sci-fi, or if you're watching Stranger Things, you know, the upside down world, like people are just like, it's here, you know? There was just so much emotion. And to me, it felt like there wasn't a place for the emotion to go. We're making music, we're doing theory, we're composing, we're dating, everyone's going to different parties, intermingling, but then we get hit with this very real reality of like the political situation. And there was this eerie sort of silence that not only emanated like in our school, but in Boston. And so like when I first got to NEC, like I was very like doe-eyed, I was happy, I was like, oh my God, what's this? And then like I was also like really passionate. I was like, we can't just stand here and be musicians and not have a voice, not have a say, not do anything. And so like I mentioned this to you guys before, but when I walked into my jazz class, my jazz ensemble, I was like, I need to cry. And so like jazz, the music that like pushed the needle, that pushed the agenda, that was a response and everything, we're in these conservatory walls and not having a conversation about that. And so for me, it was this really big impetus to create the club, start doing panels. Jason Moran, who's also like faculty advisor alongside Nadelka Prescott, BSU, like inviting people to be a part of it. And my friends became like the leaders of each club. So like I thought kind of like, while I was a part of BSU, ISC wasn't really, BSU was kind of like this intersection, like out of the connections that I was able to have. The Asian Student Union was, you know, facilitated and just different things. So I think for me, the initial question, does the system need to be dismantled or do you think we could work within it? I think we need to understand what's going on, but I definitely think I'm okay with the system being dismantled. And I'm okay with rebuilding it in a way that has reciprocity and equality involved. Like, you know, I know it may sound just like the walls of Jericho came tumbling down, but sometimes like a phoenix, we need to rise from the ashes. And like, that's okay. Like we can transform. I think we need to assess and be okay with like letting go of old ideas and old beliefs as we step into this new age. Because 2020 ain't playing games. Like 2020 she's coming for everyone's edges.
I think I'm with the dismantling for the fact that it has been 15 years since my time, 20 years, and hardly anything has changed. So yeah, we need to keep what's good, if there's anything that's good, and begin again. But I've got issues with much of the superiority that comes with a classical music education and thinking that the highest, best art in the world has its roots in Europe only. I mean, that word classical, I'm going to rail against that my whole life. I don't want to be pigeonholed as a classical anything. You can call me composer if you need to, but I prefer creator or artist, activist. My pen is my activism. But yeah, let's begin again. Let's make it better.
Can I just ask a follow-up on that? deVon, you say, you know, let's keep what's good. Can you tell me a little bit more about what do you feel is good? What do you feel is working?
Okay, I think ear training is good. It's a short list. I mean, there's some good repertoire, of course, but the rep was, again, one of those microaggressions. Why weren't we taught George Walker and William Grant Still and Florence Price and Chevalier de Saint-Georges with equal weight to the names that we know, the names that get programmed to death every season? And in this 250th anniversary year of Beethoven, I was not mad that a lot of things had to be canceled this year. Again, I hope we come back better and take what we need, and we don't need many more performances of Beethoven. That's something I know.
I don't know exactly how I feel about dismantling the system. I do feel, yes, you're right. If you've seen the same patterns after 15 years time, then something needs to absolutely change and be restructured. I do feel, however, when it comes to dismantling, it's hard to dismantle systematic racism. It's hard to dismantle others' opinions, their the different. So it relies really on people. Unfortunately, um, well, fortunately, things are all run by people, and people all have opinions, and people all have different backgrounds. So I think in dismantling a system, I think one thing that has to happen is people have to dismantle their own opinions within inside themselves. Because okay, my experience with being in the vocal department, here comes a Black guy. Okay, of course, where do I come from? I come from the church. Hallelujah. So you're already looking at me. You're looking at me thinking, and this is a common concept. It's very common in the opera world. When you see a Black person, you say, okay, they probably come from the church. So if, let's say, I do a little slide here. Now I'm trying to be artistic because I heard Renee Fleming do it. You understand? But all of a sudden, this artistic thing that Renee just did, she's super. She's great. All of a sudden, I'm non-stylistic. I'm church. I'm this. It's this opinion where as being a Black voice major, you had to be perfect. Now I heard the same white brother sing the same. Now that's this boy cracked every time. My goodness, every time he sang a high C, it was like. Now this young white man, good. He's a great tenor. I love his voice. He's great. Now I cracked one time. All of a sudden, I have no technique. He's learning. He's developing. I have no technique. Now, needless to say, I never cracked again. Okay. But the point was is that it wasn't okay. It wasn't okay for me to develop. I already had to be perfect. My languages, because people assume, oh, he must have a poor, he didn't come from much. So why would he know Italian? Or why would he know German? But I can speak 3 languages. Watch out. And yes, I am from a poor, economically challenged home. So the thing is, this sort of conception that this dismantling, what needs to be dismantled is really the perception in people's minds. And before you can start there, I mean, once people realize that they need to change, because you can restart a whole system, but if you got the same people, that's not going to work either. So that's just my opinion.
So what I'm hearing from you, John, is you feel it's got to start from it's got to be a change of heart completely.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, yeah.
That's what dismantling looks like to you.
To me. Yeah, to me.
That's beautiful. Darynn?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I totally agree. And I think a part of this process of me being in quarantine, like so much inner unresolved emotional material has been coming up. And I would question the notion of what really is racism, because in my opinion, as of today, there's a spectrum, but it seems to be a seed. There's also a seed of discrimination that is within me, whether it's discriminating against what I choose to do today, or whether it's discriminating where I go, who I'm with. And so being in this ecosystem of America, I had to question, like, just because I'm Black, does that mean that any preconceived notions, any classist notions, any things that are already within me aren't being expressed? Because I see them in so many people around me. And so kind of this whole changing my heart too is having the willingness, because at the beginning of this COVID, I was so angry with white people. I really was. I was angry. It was like I wanted this apology that I never thought I would get. I wanted them to understand something that I never thought they would. And I wanted them, and I'm speaking in real generalizations here, I wanted them to be able to hold my anger in a way that I don't even know if I knew how to hold my anger. And with like the death of George Floyd, the murder of George Floyd, pardon, and with all of these things happening, it was really hard for me to find a place of compassion, not only for myself, but for the other. And I think in this dismantling, how, like, what is, like, cancel culture is existent, right? Do we just throw out everybody if they do something bad? Like, should we take them back in? And then also, like, understanding this need that we need each other. And I'm so thankful that Congress is made of people. I'm thankful that they're not artificial intelligence robots yet. So that's kind of where I'm at. So, but the biggest way is like through experience, and there has to be some levels of discomfort and unlearning, even for me.
I totally agree. I absolutely totally agree with you. I think that I didn't know, okay, I grew up, well, my family was raised Nation of Islam. And so my grandmother had very strong views on white people in America. Understandably, she had many family members killed by the KKK and things of this nature. So I totally understood. However, I just realized, I said, look, I didn't realize, because white people have been a very instrumental part of my career all the way through. I mean, come on, I live in Germany. I live in a very white society. So they have been very instrumental in my career. It's like a two-edged sword. Um, I think that sometimes, but when Trump got elected, this is why I always say, they always say necessary evils. I know a lot of my friends don't agree with me about this, but I think that Trump after Obama was a very great necessary evil. I think it took time for me to realize whatever was inside of me, the lack of, and one thing about being Black, being taught as if, they try to tell us that we have no culture. We have a grand culture that we don't even realize we had. And I think the more you travel the world, you see that Black culture is really what represents America. And Blacks in America don't even realize. So after going through that, I realized I had all these things as within inside of me that I didn't even realize that was there. So again, it takes not just whites looking into themselves, but also Blacks. Are we going to come together? However, I'm not here to necessarily convince you that you shouldn't be racist or explain to you why it's wrong to shoot a child who has a bag of Skittles in his hand. I'm not here. If you can't see that, honey, you should go watch, I don't know, Oprah. I don't know what you need to watch, but I don't have time to do that, however. But
Agreed.
that's just my opinion.
Agreed. No, we're not here to teach, and we're not
No,
here to help others live their
read
best
a book.
experiences. Yeah. Uh, Baldwin has been, Baldwin is still so relevant today, sadly. And
Hmm.
my favorite quote of his is, I'm not worried about what you're going to do to me or what you can do to me. You've already done it. You can't do anything more to me. You can't take anything more from me.
Hmm.
It's your heart that I have concern for, like the hate that you have. What's that doing to you and to your people, your community? That's what I'm concerned with. So I, yeah, I'm sad right now for us on a lot of levels. Obviously, I'm sad and elated for my personal community here in the Twin Cities. The revolution will be televised. The revolution will be real. But I'm sad for America and what it is right now. Again, what Trump has brought to the fore, necessary evil, absolutely. But because some people need that veil pulled back. I have friends, white male friends, who've said things to me like, deVon, I thought racism was done. I thought we were past that. I, I don't know what to do with that sort of small thinking. Um, but we just all need the veil pulled back all the time. See each other more clearly. See how we're actually being treated every day, always. I feel like we can get there. It might not happen in my lifetime, but if we keep pushing the way we're pushing right now, we'll see the change that we're talking about.
I don't know if you want to say something, Darynn. I saw you unmuted
Oh, I
yourself.
want to say that's when you say like beloved, like sweetheart. No, I would actually challenge this notion that we're not here to teach, because I think this is a nuanced kind of thing, at least for me in my experience. I've had these times where I don't feel like teaching, and then not only just teaching, but like teaching someone how to treat me. But I also find that that's the only way, like, respect and understanding and compassion can actually happen if we do teach. And so I'm a little bit, I challenge the notion that we shouldn't be telling white people or people who haven't experienced racism to the same degree or level that we shouldn't be teaching them. Like,
You're right. I misspoke. It's just that I'm so tired right now in this moment that I'm sort of done right now.
right.
But yeah, you're right. The teaching will commence again.
Well, that's what I think. And I think that's part of like the hard part for us is that like like I spent so much time in college. I would just be on my floor, just my carpet is soaking in water, salty waters from my tears, being in meetings with administration, and everyone's like, oh yeah, they went well. And I'm just like, guys, this is the beginning of the end. And then like at the beginning of COVID, I just felt so done. And so like, I also asked a question, like, what do we do when we feel like we're at our capacity to even begin to teach, to even help or be a part of someone else's learning, when we're just like completely
Burned out.
Yeah, it feels like that sometimes.
I definitely feel that, Darynn. And especially, we're having this conversation at the end of a summer of these conversations and reactions to George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, and institutions putting out these statements of solidarity that we have to check, and then we have to write our list of demands and what we really want to see and all of this. And it is exhausting, but I really agree with you, Darynn, that we got to keep keeping on. We just have to, and we have to teach, and we have to bring along the people that want to be our allies, and we see them, and they're not the people who are saying, oh, I don't see what's wrong. He looked suspicious, so I'm just gonna shoot him. Like, that might be, I'm not gonna say a lost cause, but maybe that's another conversation for another time. But the people that are trying to be allies, we have a responsibility. The way I feel, we have a responsibility to talk to them, to share our feelings, to have these forums, to have people listen, to share our thoughts about what can we do, what do we hope to see. That's what this conversation really is centered on. So speaking of teaching and pedagogy and philosophy, that is what NEC is supposed to be doing. NEC is supposed to be shaping the next generation. They're supposed to be not preparing you to be a professional musician, but what I really am interested in is preparing people to be good citizens, preparing them to have a to be whole humans and see things. And so I've been thinking a lot about this in the pandemic. I mean, the pandemic, we're not only dealing with the inequities that are just being laid bare because of the pandemic, because we see people of color being disproportionately affected, which is really no surprise. It's very obvious now, right? And so we're seeing that, and it's forcing everyone to look at their institutions and see, okay, what's actually happening in my institution? How does this translate to what's happening at NEC? I know at Juilliard, there's somebody, a viola teacher, who said, well, I see what's happening in the world, but I don't see how this translates to my viola student. I just teach people how to play viola, and so we really got to break it down for them. And I really hope that NEC takes this moment, like you said, Darynn, I love that, rising from the ashes. We are straight up ash right now. Like, we have no but we got fork in the road with the pandemic. So, you're going to see institutions do this, and you're going to see other institutions do this, and grow time. And I hope that NEC is one of them. And I'm curious, what do you all think what kind of philosophical shift are you hoping to see in pedagogy? Not just churning out musicians and composers, but what do you really hope to see change in that way? And how do those changes manifest? Does that mean, for me, obviously, curriculum's got to change. Like, it's a broken system. What are we conserving anymore? It's New England Conservatory. I understand that it comes from this tradition, European tradition, but really, what are we conserving anymore? I don't know. Leadership, that's got to change. I want to see, total revamping of the way that their hiring practices work. Auditions, interviews. Are we going to interview our students, or are we just going to take the best player that we see and not even try to check our own biases? Like, we talk about blind auditions in the professional world all the time. What about blind auditions for NEC, for entrances to NEC? I mean, I don't know that that's the solution. I know people have a lot of feelings about blind auditions, but those are some of the things that I've been thinking about.
I think everything you said was awesome. And if I just, when I maybe I misspoke a little bit when I say teach, I just want to go back really quickly. Sorry. When I said I'm not in the mood to teach, I do think I'm still not in the mood to teach. However, I am in the mood to have discussions like this and people to join and listen. And I just wanted to say really quickly that I think that people need to be responsible and turn on their adult button. And if you want to know about racism and things like that, really, it's in a book. Take a look. It's called Reading Rainbow. And I'm serious. People need to be adults and go do some research on their own. Because I'm sorry. If you'd like to learn, I guess I can give a racism class for $25 an hour. NEC special. Okay, so back to what you said. No, I'm joking. But what you said, I do agree that absolutely so much. Like definitely diversity in the faculty and coming to and the auditions as well. You already know it's like they've reached their quota of whatever. Okay, we got our blacks, we got 2, we got 3. That's enough. We got to, but I felt it was that way. So maybe blind auditions is a great way to go and definitely changing. And I also think exactly what you said, because I had so many Asian girls, Asian women come up to me and talk about, oh my God, you're so nice. You're so nice for a black guy. And I said, well, honey, okay, thanks. But having sort of these classes that allow us and interviews, and that's why I appreciate Juilliard, because they do an interview process, if I'm not mistaken, right? To see who you are as a person. Carmen?
Depends on your department.
Oh, it depends on the department. Okay. But that, I think, is a big thing, because you need to realize who are you bringing into your college. And if you really don't give a damn, then you're letting everything and anything come, you know what I'm saying? It's a part. So I think, like you said, interviews, maybe some blind auditions. Yeah, I agree with that totally.
Well, I think it's interesting, John, that you say, like, the last question, who are you bringing into your college? And that I think, I'll speak for myself. I think I get to see people in different capacities as a Black woman than white bodies see other white bodies in their own relationship. So I may know X faculty member on staff in a certain way that's like, okay, this is a microaggression, or okay, they said something that really wasn't cool. But the rest of the community doesn't see them in that way. And so a part of it is like, how can we have the space to have conversations so that the experience of other people is validated within the institution? Because then we don't really know who we are, and we also don't know who each other, what we mean to each other in the authority that we take shape, the gender that we take shape, our cis heteronormative that we take shape. And I think one thing that came out of this whole discussion was silence is violence. And I just remember thinking, like, in my opinion, there were so many queer people at NEC. And just even sexuality. There are queer artists, like Wendy Carlo did the bomb soundtrack to The Shining, iconic, Switched on Bach, Clockwork Orange, like contemporary examples of people who just kind of get wiped out. And I think there could be a culture at NEC where these walls come down, and there has to be a a time and a way that we can hold a conversation that really says we're going to get really uncomfortable and we're going to hear you and listen. And you're not like, it's not like what you're saying is like the God of the Bible. What you're saying is valid for you. And I think that has to be something. Like right now, there are people in charge that aren't knowing how they're being perceived.
And I totally agree with that. Sorry, I just wanted to follow up on that before we kind of go off on something different. But would that manifest in some sort of bias reporting? I don't know what's in place at NEC right now. It's been a couple of years, but would that manifest in bias reporting, or would there be some sort of monthly forum where students and faculty, well, the community comes together, in small groups and has these conversations, and you get to share, hey, this is my experience. This is something a teacher said to me. I definitely had that experience where a teacher said something and he had no idea. I know he didn't. He's got a good heart, but it was not okay. It was a little inappropriate thing to say, and he made a lot of assumptions about me because of the color of my skin, and I didn't appreciate it. But I didn't have a space to say that. I didn't know who to go to. So how do you see that manifesting?
I can respond, or if anyone else wants to respond too, I'm fine with that. I guess it seemed, there was one thing I wanted to do at NEC while I was there that time and the space didn't align, but it was called Closing the Gap. And it was basically like in the new building, in the new building, moving back all the chairs and all the table and placing these cards on the ground, and everyone is coming from a card that they identify, but then there's questions that are being asked, and then you move to the card that best represents your answers to the question, and then you get to see who's around, and just like different kind of ways of like pushing the needle. Like now, because of COVID, it may be hard to like get close to someone, but maybe one person is standing on one side of the room, the other person's on the other, and then you tell them to come closer to a point which, like, as close as they may want to get. But if it gets too much, you get to see how far they actually like connection, So then maybe that person's 10 feet away and that's as close as they want to get. And then we ask why. Why don't you want to come closer to me? Like, what's going on? And just kind of like loving curiosity. And then also like new people in the community. Like we need new people in our communities to make them better.
I'll go if nobody has anything. deVon, John?
Go ahead, deVon. deVon there?
I think he's giving the floor to you.
Yes, to
you. I don't know what to say for once in my life. Go ahead, Carmen. You take it, and then I'll piggyback off of you. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, Darynn, I love that idea. I love the idea of not using your words sometimes, because this is so hard to talk about. And even I sometimes worry about, is this okay for me to say? Can I share this? Can I use that word? And those insecurities, some people are very, very, they want to talk, but they don't know how to talk about this. So that that there's something really beautiful about just physically being in a space with people and seeing what they do and how they respond and taking your cues from that. And I think that really works for a student body like NEC, where you have people from everywhere. It is really diverse in a lot of ways. It's not the kind of diversity we're talking about here, but it is diverse in a lot of ways. That people from everywhere. And I think about the international student body a lot, and how to bring them into this conversation and to really break down all of you said something, to bring the walls down, right? Like we got to do a better job of doing that. I think NEC needs to do a better job of cultivating that environment. There needs to be a shift there, because it felt very toxic for me while I was there. And I know that y'all didn't necessarily feel that, but if you look back, or if you think about certain experiences, you might say, yeah, that wasn't the best environment. One thing that I think would be really cool is, I don't know what it's like for undergrad, but for when I was an undergrad, we had a colloquium that we had to go to every week, once a week. You're having this conversation on a different topic, but if it was just once a month where it was mandatory, students have to come and you have to talk about this. We need to talk about this. We confront it. It's part of being in America. It's part of being in a country where it is a melting pot. And you got to confront these issues. And specifically with Black history, I mean, I'm from Alabama, so there's a lot that comes with that. I mean, I went to school right down the street from the 16th Street Baptist Church. And for anyone who doesn't know, please look that up if you didn't know about the bombing that happened there. But I mean, I lived that. I really lived that. You know, like my mom read me Black poetry. My dad made sure I knew what was going on in Birmingham when he was growing up, when he was a kid, what it was like. I was very aware of that. But there are people in this country that have no idea, Americans that have no idea. And then we're asking international students who are just trying to learn music to understand and be sensitive to all of these issues. And I think that that's kind of an unfair ask. And as an educational institution, I think NEC has the responsibility to also teach that, and not just things like, in America we tip, and in America this is the thing. America's a lot more than that, and these issues are here. So I think it would be really interesting to have that, to have people try to understand the history, and it doesn't just have to be, you know, Black history, but maybe also we learn a little bit about like Chinese American. It's not like they had the easiest time here either, right? And so maybe there's more intersection than we want to believe that there is.
I totally agree with that. I think forums in this setting would be awesome for kids. Also, everyone coming in with, you know, a lot of times, whether it's Black or white, we don't allow each other to express ourselves fully without becoming offended or emotional. I think that whites can't become emotional, neither can Blacks. You know, oh, I just don't understand why Black is okay. You know, I'm really cool with a lot of people who just come out and say, you know, I just don't get it. This does not make any sense to me. I understand that sort of mentality, and I'm not just gonna jump on you. And I think if students all had you know, if an Asian or came up to me and said, hey guys, what you want, what you gonna do, what you gonna do? If they got, that's all I saw of a Black man is this cop show called Cops, because that was like, this is what I was saying about systematic racism. It's hard to dismantle something that's so perpetuated throughout society. Unfortunately, it leaks to the entire world. So you have these Asian girls or coming in thinking that we're all going to rob them because they all want to wear Louis Vuitton and high heels every day. No, darling, I don't. So even if they were allowed to, if everyone were allowed to express themselves and how they feel, it would be great. I think that would be an awesome forum. And I think what's most important is the one, white people, you know, definitely with I think Darynn mentioned this once, their fragility, this sort of, oh my God, I'm not racist. No, girl, nobody's calling you racist. We're just saying, honey, look back at what you're saying, and maybe think about how someone else from another view would see it. I think these sort of things, and if everyone's allowed to be open, and I'm not talking about being just blatantly racist, right? We're just not going to say, you know, go back home to your country. No, we're not going to allow those things. But everyone's in a safe space to express truly how they feel, and as long as those forums are present, I think people can definitely move forward.
I think there absolutely should be some sort of a forum or a colloquium, weekly, monthly gathering. I experienced some of those same issues with women who are international students from Asia. So again, clearly wherever you're coming from internationally, you're being prepared by your folks as well, because they have their misconceptions and ideas about what America is and how dangerous it is.
Right.
It is the Wild West because everybody's got a gun.
It is. Yeah.
So yeah, just to combat that and say, no, you've been lied to.
Right. Exactly.
And I think my biggest thing is like, what if you are a racist? Like, can we work through that?
I think absolutely we have for years. I think that's what we do. And honestly, I'm sorry, Darren, to cut you off.
No,
I'm
go
just
ahead.
responding. But right there, it's also, if somebody could also say that when I told you about NEC getting on me about cracking and all those things, one could argue that they were actually preparing me for the real world. And I know we're going to get into this a little later, but the fact of the matter is they were a little tougher on us Blacks. But realistically, that's because that's what the classical world was going to do. The fact of the matter was that guy who was cracking would be accepted way quicker than me. And that's just the fact. The fact is, my teacher had to tell me, she was like, dude, you're Black and you're a tenor. It's going to be hard. So you can't be less than. And that's, like I said, it's unfortunate. But these things, if somebody comes in and says, I'm a racist, we deal with them every day. I'm glad you're at least open and say, hey, I don't like you, because you know why? We don't need to be friends. But as long as you don't disrespect me and you stay, we over there, you don't disrespect me, I don't disrespect you. Everyone's allowed to have their own personal opinion. And if someone is racism, I don't think that means they should be expelled from college. What I think that means is that you should just stay in your lane. If you want to have you and your little racist thoughts, but just don't come and don't disrespect or hurt or cause violence or harm to anyone else. And I don't think that to me, I think it's a little wrong to, sometimes it's cancel culture of, oh, he's a racist. Okay, many people are racist. We deal with them every day. Would you rather a racist that comes and tell you, hey, I'm racist, or someone who hides behind a mask for years and has been literally taking away all your opportunities with their microaggressions and all these little things, or just somebody be like, I don't like you because you Black. I'll take him. That's just my personal opinion. I know it sounds weird.
No, I hear you.
That sort of sneaky, you all of a sudden, I'm not a racist, but you really are. And then you work behind, and all of a sudden you see as years and years go by, all the racism and the microaggressions and all these things, and you're like, man, I wish you were just straight up with me and told me the absolute truth, because we could have dealt with that at the beginning. Nobody thinks what I think, but it's okay.
No, you're not alone in that. Again,
Okay.
Baldwin said it. It's the moderate whites that are the real evil.
Right.
I have a lot to say about that. I'm sure we all do, but I am gonna move it along just because I think it does tie in a little bit to what you were just talking about, John, which was that you felt that teachers were, in their own twisted way. Now, I don't think they were thinking of it that way, but they were preparing you for the real world, because it is tougher out there. You do have to be that much better. You do have to be that much more prepared. And that is the reality. Yeah. So my question, and another thing that this pandemic has let me think about and ruminate on, is what responsibility do institutions like NEC, and NEC in particular, what responsibility do they have in pushing the industry forward? I think we talk a lot about, well, this is the industry. We need to, as an institution, do this for the industry because we need to get these students jobs, which question mark on how well that's going. But keeping the conversation focused. What about the reverse? What about institutions changing the industry, not just in the people that you're putting out and the people that are graduating and then going on into the workforce, but really just, can you set an example? Can you raise the bar for who gets to guest conduct, for who gets to do a master class, for who, obviously gets hired as full-time staff, for who becomes the next president of whatever, the alumni association, all that stuff. What can NEC be doing to push the industry forward? I had a horrible experience at NEC where they invited a conductor who told the entire student body, or at least the student orchestra, there wasn't a single person in the industry with a discriminatory bone in their body. We don't need blind auditions. Just all this absolute nonsense that I know several students in the audience took offense, great offense to that, but NEC is telling me I need to look up to this person, and you're putting him literally on a podium. You're putting him on a pedestal. That says something, and that's not okay. So if you are going to invite people, I think they need to be of a certain caliber, not just in their art, but also just as a person and their values. So what are some other ways? Anybody?
I'm thinking one thing that comes to mind for me is, like, I was thinking of it yesterday, that our language that we use is really powerful. And I was thinking deadline. So deadline, like, oh, you need to meet this application, submit this by this deadline, right? Why is there such a terrible thing around deadlines? Or, oh, someone's on academic probation, right? These terms are directly correlated to like capital punishment, penitentiary, not only for, you know, people of color and minorities in this country, but also for like lower class, you know, students or people from different demographics, like socioeconomic demographics. And like, I found out that deadline meant, it was a term that was used for prisons during the Civil War in America, that it was a boundary in the prison that if a prisoner crossed, they would get shot and they would get killed. So you cross the deadline, like that's the line that you become dead. And it was, there are certain Confederate camps that would have a lot of deadlines and different boundaries. And who fought in the Civil War? Tons of Black men. And, you know, there were a lot of women involved in nursing and all these different things. So when they got in the Confederate camps, they were killed numbers by deadlines and all these sorts of things. And I think like our language is so important. And I think if we could start decolonizing the language, like what's in the policies, like why are people on probation? Why are there deadlines? Why is there such a construct? And be fearless about, like, I think it's really cool when everyone's on board. So like when we see Berkeley doing it, it's cool. Or when we see Juilliard doing it, then it becomes more accessible, like looking to other schools to make the benchmark. But I think what the onus has to be is, let's set the bar for something that hasn't been done before. Let's reclaim a space of uniqueness. Let's not try to be like everybody else. If everybody's being racist, let's not be racist. And let's actually do something that's constructive. And that may mean free education, or that may mean, you know, tons of different creative solutions for building a future, because it's easy to follow and it's so much harder to lead. And I think NEC has a really unique opportunity to be leaders. And that's, you have to have some fearlessness about that. Like, it comes with not knowing. It comes with like this machete in your hand trying to whack things down. It comes with people leaving, but what the benefits of it are, we don't know. But I imagine in my heart that it feels like freedom.
I don't know how we get there, but I want a taste of that freedom. Sorry, John, didn't mean to cut you off.
No, go ahead, please. No, absolutely. No, I was just, no, go ahead, deVon, it's okay.
Seriously, no, I'm good.
Oh, okay. No, I totally agree with you. I totally agree. And that does sound like great freedom, and changing the language within policies, and what I love, Darynn, is, how old are you, Darynn, if you don't mind me asking?
I'm 23.
That's fantastic. And what I love about that, oh my God, I could be your dad. What I love about that is that you hear, you hear the excitement, and this is why I'm excited for the future. I feel like the future is where we're going. These sort of ideas that you all as the younger generation have is going to propel us, because you guys have a different mindset. You guys don't think a lot like how we think, because I think we've become a little jaded over time. So I think these new ideas, these new policies that you speak of, new information, new language, is exactly the direction that we need to go in. And you all will be there to lead us. As soon as we get through these, you know, a couple generations, you know, we'll be on the right way. And I was just applauding you, and I love your positivity and your outlook. I was just appreciating it.
Oh, thank you. Well, you everyone, Carmen, deVon, you, John, you guys are all really inspiring to me to have this who would have thought, like, to have this conversation, like, what, on Zoom, like we're being live streamed, hey YouTube.
Exactly.
I love that though, John. Like that's a perfect segue into really our last kind of talking point, which is what do we see for the future of NEC? You know,
Yeah.
in 20 years from now, we're all separated by about that time. 15, 20 years from now, what do we see at NEC? Now, thinking really big dreams. If
Big.
if you had everything go your way. That's for everybody, but you can go first, John.
I know. I don't need to. I know. I feel like I'm talking too much. I want somebody else to go first.
Same as I want in all the community music schools throughout the country and all the arts high schools and recording arts high schools. I want those institutions to be a true reflection of the communities that they're in. I want them to be open and accessible. Since my time, organizations like Sphinx, Shanike Foundation, and other groups have emerged, and that's beautiful. So we need these pipelines where we're getting young people with instruments in their hands and knowing that there are these opportunities available to them. So, I mean, we just need to, so we need the pipeline, we need to get faculty, all the things we've talked about. We need more Black faculty, we need more non-white faculty and staff and administration. And it's only going to happen because we're asking for it now. We're not asking, we're demanding. Y'all are a little louder and more vocal than I am, but I'm wanting that. I'm wanting that just as much as you do. John?
Unmute. Okay. Yes, I totally agree. I think the biggest thing, the biggest reflection is, that I would have is definitely the diversity amongst faculty. That to me is so important because you cannot tell me they're not unbelievable Black opera singers, Black conductors, Black violists, I'm sorry, like, and also, and with NEC Prep. NEC Prep continuing education, I just don't understand it. I said, it's just great. It's supposed to be, this thing with the community. You have one, when I was there, there was one Black boy. One Black boy. I said, you have the whole city of Dorchester. And I see Berkeley with the same kids. Okay, Berkeley has all these kids in their youth, and there's definitely representation of color. So what I would love to see is that NEC Prep, continuing education, actually reaching out to the community, the actual community that's in, like Dorchester, which is like, where nobody wants to go apparently, even though I love Dorchester, with, what is it called, Wally's, the club. These sort of things. Having changes definitely amongst the student body. I hear that you all have a student union now. That's amazing. Diversity amongst students. Not saying, and nobody's looking for a handout here. Nobody's looking for affirmative action. You deserve to get into school because you deserve to get into school. Everybody's got to do their work. However, it is quite odd because I'm like, are there no Black good vocalists? I just can't believe it because I have 40 friends who are. So I think if we start with ourselves, start innerlich in German, but oh my God, start on the inside and then and work then towards the outside. If everybody goes home and does their homework, I see that NEC could potentially be not one of the best music institutions, because I don't know how many institutions are truly doing things like this. So I feel as if NEC is moving in the right direction. They're saying, hey guys, what can we do better? Well, you can start with administration, faculty, and hopefully in 15 years, we see a program which is truly reflective of America and not just reflective of Asia and white America. That's my hope.
I just want to push on that one thing that keeps coming up. We keep saying diversify the faculty. And I still want to generally talk about what you see for the future of NEC, but because that seems to be such an important point for all of us. I mean, I, to this day, have not had a Black violin teacher, have not had a Black mentor in that way. And that's problematic. And it's not until I've reached this age and this time in my life where I've had to say, that actually affected me. You know, that didn't just, oh, I'm fine, and that didn't mean anything. No, it actually did affect me. And it affects a lot of my, psychologically, what I deal with when I'm on stage, what I'm thinking about in other lessons. It definitely had an effect. So how do we do that, guys? How do we diversify the faculty? How do we, especially when we have, you know, tenured positions?
Well,
For me, go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead. No, you for sure, because I talked about it. So.
No, I think the class. You know, it's interesting. You said earlier, Carmen, that we kind of have different, like, it may be different on the classical side than the jazz side, but actually on the jazz side, there weren't tons of Black teachers, other than like the ones that were like quintessentially, you know, jazz is American Black music. Like, it was created by an indigenous American, but it was America. It was created by Black people and shared now globally. Like, it's a global language. But I think too that jazz history has been recorded through the eyes of white men mostly. It's been delivered in this history through these Ken Burns documentaries and through these different ways of people understanding it. And so I think in just diversifying staff, like, one, I think the inner work that the people who are already involved in NEC may consider doing is kind of just thinking to themselves, like, what would be the benefit of having someone from a different community, a different race, a different gender? What would be the benefit of that, of this perceived difference anyway? And then I think in terms of hiring, I think everyone like, it's music. Everyone has like a special thing to bring to the table. And it would just be as easy as hiring someone. Like, people hire white people all the time. Like, sometimes when I'll be driving down the street and I see a billboard, I'm like, oh, white people doing things. Oh, white people doing things. You know, you go to the grocery store, there's a store manager. Oh, white people doing things. White people hire white people all the time. And it's just not hard. Just hire a Black person, hire an Asian person, hire someone from the trans community. Just hire good, honest musicians.
Targeted hiring.
Oh.
Like,
Yeah.
but actually targeted, I want to fill this position with a Black person or with a
Right. Yeah.
Well, I see. I think it's a two-edged sword again. It's not just as simple as hiring. Okay, you have a NEC, a school that has the caliber of NEC. Usually, when it comes to voice, I'm talking about voice. To the voice faculty, you want to hire those who've had careers. Who's having careers? So that means somebody had to hire Black people so that they could have had a great career, so that they could have been it's like more layers and layers and layers and layers. It can't. You know, you have all these great Black opera singers that are just sitting on the side. They're going to the same auditions. They're not getting hired. So of course, when NEC says, but your list here is not, it's not as, it's not comparable to this diva. Well, we know it's not, because she's been trying to get hired for forever. So I guess if there's multiple layers underneath that, that's so interesting as well to me when it comes to just hiring. So I think it's sort of a revolving door. We need opera houses to. I mean, I'm just on my voice right now, but we need opera houses to hire more Blacks, so that the more Blacks can have the career, so that they can come teach us. But absolutely, when it comes to the Black voice, there's something so special with it, and I don't give a damn what nobody says. It's just something special with it, whether it's opera, jazz, classical, whatever. So I think there's a big missed opportunity to have a great Black faculty, at least one Black faculty member on the voice department, because Black people, as us as class, we would run to that, because we know that dealing with our voice and our tone and timbre is something other than, others. Just saying.
I love that. I love that about voice. It's kind of like hair. Like, you're not gonna go to white salon you're gonna go to, somebody who knows how to do your hair. Yeah, I get that. But I guess what I was thinking in terms of hiring then, if we're talking about targeted hiring, what was I gonna say? Oh, I lost it. But Daryn, if you want to say one more thing, and then I'll just.
Yeah, I was just going to say that we have to give each other opportunities too. Like, I was the only Black RA for my year that I was in staff. I think for all my 3 years, I was the only Black RA. I'm pretty sure. And every time we go into these meetings, I'm advocating for any BSU member that steps in that room. I'm advocating for them, and I know their character. It's not like if I think that they're not great for the job, or they're really, it's within reason, but I'm advocating for them because their presence is powerful. I advocated for Korean and Chinese students to be on RA staff. Like, it's ridiculous. As many international students that stayed in the residence hall, for there to be no one on staff that spoke Chinese or Korean or could relate in an international sense. So, like, I'm always advocating for that. And I think NEC has a really good opportunity to give these wonderful musicians a chance. Because if they keep getting met at each door saying, no, 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 and then they walk to NEC and NEC looks at all the stuff and says, no, like, when will they get the opportunity? And so I think that's a part about this, like, fearless change. Like, we have to be willing to give people opportunities, give them opportunities to be amazing, give them opportunities to make mistakes, just give them a damn opportunity.
Yes, Daryn. And I just remember what I was going to say is we do have, deVon, you were saying when you were growing up, there wasn't Sphinx. Sphinx was at least not as prominent as it is now. There's Sphinx, there's Shineki, there's in Boston, Project STEP is an incredible program for students of color, string players of color in Boston. And they do a phenomenal job of creating fantastic string players. And there is kind of a partnership with NEC, but maybe that can grow. But I think in terms of hiring, reaching out to those organizations, doing that targeted hiring, saying, pushing the application and your job posting on those sites and in different communities, I think that needs to happen. So, and one thing I would like to see, just walking into NEC, can we make that a more inviting space for Black people? I think we've seen Beethoven's bust enough times. Like, we get it, it's Beethoven, he's the almighty, but what if we had some Black art on the walls? Is that something that we can do? Those are tiny things that you can do to make it a welcoming space. So if anyone has any more final thoughts about what you see for the future of NEC, I want to throw that out there, and then we'll just say thank you.
My last thought that I really want to say is that I think there could be an acknowledgement and an apology, an institution acknowledgement and apology. Not saying we're with you, like, we understand, because maybe you don't understand, and that's okay if you don't understand. But I think with healing, there has to be, and people can, like, take the apology that they never got from somebody else, but it's like, how can we really assume responsibility for the roles that we've played? Like, when all the institutions said, oh, we stand with you, the heinous murder of George Floyd, all of these things, okay, really appreciated. We start somewhere. And can you have the capacity and the depth to acknowledge the ways in which you participated in a system that perpetuated the same ill-fitting logic and ill-fitting heart that George Floyd was murdered in? I think, like, can we make these connections, and can we have enough, and I don't know, maybe like a PR thing, it may be, and this is not just for NEC, I think this is for all institutions. It would be really great if there was just an acknowledgement. We have participated in institutionalized racism, period.
Some of the best commentary I heard in the aftermath of George Floyd's murder came from German police educators sort of like folks at police academies in Germany saying, it's great that you guys are talking about defunding and dismantling and starting from scratch, but y'all still haven't acknowledged racism or slavery. So yeah, putting the cart before the horse until y'all get y'all's stuff together and really do some acknowledging and some truthful soul searching. Any energy that you put toward progression or moving forward is going to be wasted energy because you're not going to get anywhere. And I feel that.
John? You got to unmute, honey.
There you go. As I quietly doze off to sleep. No. I think that what's honestly what's really great is to hear you, Carmen, and you, Darynn, and deVon, all of us speak, and just to know that at least the young people or the younger generation that's coming up, the greatest thing we could take away from this is that there's hope. Whereas I feel like when you start to get to my age and a little bit above, we don't see the hope. But every time when I speak to young children here, not children, but young adults here in Germany, I just know that there's a positive, there's a positive future. There's an acceptance level, and they're not taking the bait of race. Well, some are, but a lot of young people aren't. So we know that it will be okay. Now, the process of us getting to that okay might not be the best one. But again, like you said, out of the ashes rises the phoenix. I don't know that we're at the ashes stage yet. I don't know that we're all burnt up yet. I think there's a little bit more we got to go through before we can rise, this phoenix can rise. However, I do know that we shall rise and we shall be together. And I believe that NEC is moving in the right direction. And I'm also grateful for NEC for my education because, like I said, it was dope. But again, I'm grateful for NEC for this platform and for all of you, and I'm grateful that they're willing to talk about it. NEC, when you know better, you do better. So there it is.
Beautiful. That is the perfect note to end on. I will say one thing, Darynn, acknowledgement statement. Yes, I have actually instituted that in my own department at Juilliard. Before every performance, we are hoping to say an acknowledgement statement as they do in Canada with land acknowledgement for Indigenous people. We are hoping to do that because it needs to be said. And just in that small gesture, there's so much power and so much so much information that's relayed to the audience, and it's a communal transformation, not just for the people on stage. So I love that. Thank you to NEC. Thank you so much, NEC. I never could have dreamed that this conversation would happen. So this is so encouraging. I think we're all really happy. Thank you to deVon, Darynn, John especially getting up at 2 a.m, praise.
It's all right.
Hallelujah.
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 For getting us all together. Really appreciate you. Appreciate all y'all. Thanks for coming and have a good night or day.
Bye, guys.
Morning.
It was a pleasure. Cheers.
Yes.
Cheers.
Cheers.